most cherished rights as United States citizens. That is the freedom of speech, and why allowing our children and young people to exercise this right at a young age is critical to learning and understanding complex and tough issues and ideas. The ability to effectively teach and learn journalism and for other students to be challenged to engage in a public discourse on tough issues was severely hindered by the United States Supreme Court ruling in 1988 in a ruling called Hazelwood School District versus Kohlmeyer. The Hazelwood case legitimized a school's decision to remove material about divorce and teen pregnancy from the pages of a student newspaper on the grounds that that material was overly mature for a high school audience. Justice William Brennan, one of the First Amendment's greatest judicial champions, dissented from that ruling in words that resonate with us here today. He said, "Instead of teaching children to respect the diversity of ideas that is fundamental to the American system and our Constitution is a living reality, not parchment preserved under glass. The court today teaches youth to discount important principles of our government as mere platitudes." End quote. History has vindicated Justice Brennan's dire warning. Students report regularly that they've been prevented from discussing matters of public importance in the pages of student media, or perhaps worse, they've restrained themselves from even attempting to address an issue of social or political concern in fear of adverse consequences. That is not an environment that values and empowers student voices, and it's not a climate conducive to effective and learning civic participation. We can and must do better. On the 25th anniversary of the Hazelwood decision in 2013, every major journalism education organization in the nation enacted a resolution calling on schools and colleges to abandon reliance on the Hazelwood level of institutional control. The sentiment was perhaps best expressed by the Association for Education and Journalism and Mass Communication, the country's largest organization of college journalism instructors, which said, "No legitimate purpose is served by censorship of student journalism, even if it reflects unflatteringly on school policies and programs, candidly discusses sensitive social and political issues, or voices opinions challenging to majority views on a matter of public concern." 9 states since then have statutes protecting the independence of student journalists to report on issues of public concern without fear, and 2 have comparable protections by way of the State Board of Education rules. The combined experiences of these 11 states spans well over 160 years, demonstrating that young people are fully capable of exercising a measure of legally protected press freedom responsibly and without incident or harm. I am proud to say that my own home state, North Dakota, established a position of national leadership by enacting the John Wall New Voices of North Dakota Act in 2015. The statute was named in memory of a truly amazing educator, John Wall, who lived his own civics lesson by running for the North Dakota House of Representatives, where he served with great distinction for 10 years after retiring from a 34-year career in as a public school teacher. The New Voices Act passed the North Dakota State Legislature with bipartisan sponsorship and without a single negative vote. That is truly an amazing, I think, fact. And so, as we think about the importance of student journalism and the importance of voicing opinions and the importance of learning the value of participation through First Amendment or through speech, I'm often reminded of a personal incident that I had in my family. My daughter was not on the school newspaper when she was in high school, but she frequently wrote a column One column that she wrote generated a lot of controversy in a very small town at a time when it was much more controversial. And it was an article that promoted marriage equality. And she ended up getting a lot of grief, a lot of negative attention as a result of writing that article. My daughter is pretty opinionated, so it didn't bother her too much. But many years later, I got a letter from a mother. And that letter from a mother talked about how she was in a same-sex relationship and had been most of her life and most of her daughter's life. And how once my daughter had published this article in the Mandan school newspaper, it changed the outcome. It changed the way her daughter went to school every day because she knew she wasn't alone. She knew someone was there in that school that understood her challenges and supported her family. And so where it may not move big issues and it may not be a big moving example like Hazelwood, it can in fact change outcomes. And the ability to express yourself, the ability to be part of a community where we have open ideas is absolutely instrumental and critical to the future of our country. And when you look at the restrictions that still today are put on student press and student newspapers, we know we have to do better. And so I applaud the New Voices of North Dakota organization and its founder, Professor Steve Lipsopad of Valley City State University, and those teachers, professors, and students around the country who engage in similar efforts, for helping shine the nation's attention on the urgent need to protect meaningful and candid journalism so that young people have an opportunity to participate and drive the civic dialogue about the world in which they live and where they will eventually lead. The skills learned and developed by student journalists and the roles that they can play in driving public conversation among their peers speak to the indispensable role that journalism can play, if adequately supported by our schools, in educating the next generation for the careers of the future and for preparing our children to discuss, debate, and lead on important and controversial issues. I think that as we are moving forward and taking a look at what can be done, I think it's important that we all appreciate that the First Amendment is not something that you should just learn in school books. It is something that you must exercise. And the sooner you exercise that First Amendment right to speech, the sooner we recognize that young voices in this country are as critical as older voices. And no student should be restricted or prevented from expressing an opinion, the stronger we will grow in our democracy. And so I look forward to continuing to work on this issue. I look forward to taking on the difficult task of talking about what we can do nationally to advance this. But I mainly came here to applaud the great state of North Dakota for recognizing the importance of students' First Amendment rights and encourage all the members in this chamber to examine what happens at home with students' First Amendment rights, to provide leadership, to promote those rights in their state, and to potentially look at how we can reverse the Hazelwood decision so that we can grow a more confident, a more educated, and a more diverse population for our future. With that, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk should call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.